Hello, welcome to Zoonosis with Joy. I'm Joy, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about bits. This is a piece of horse tack that has very interesting history. There's many different kinds, and I'm going to rein it in and talk about oral pain in horses and what we can do about it. Stick around for more. Leave a comment in the comment section if you have any thoughts. Give a like, share around. It really helps the channel, and it helps get exposure for some of the projects that I'm working on. So, what is a bit? A bit is a piece of horse tack that is used to guide the horse while it moves around. It is put in the mouth of the horse between the last incisor and the first premolar, either premolar 1 or premolar 2, on the bottom jaw. This is called a bar, or if you're not a horse person, I'm a veterinarian, I call it the diastema. It's a gap, basically, and it rests on the very sensitive gingiva, the gums of the mouth of the horse. There are two major kinds of bits. There's snaffles, which have a joint in the middle, and they're controlled directly by the reins, the little pulley bits on the horse, as well as the curb bit. They have shanks that go down, and they indirectly put pressure on the mouth. They often have a chin strap associated with them as well. Both of these have kind of phased in and out of popularity throughout history, but they're the two major kinds. There's also hybrid bits like the Pelham bit, but we're not really going to get into that in this video. Bits are kind of graded by their severity. So severity of bits really is the amount of pressure that you're putting on the mouth. This is measured in square inches, not cubic, or square centimeters basically. Pounds per square inch or kilograms per square centimeter. So it's the amount of pressure that you're exerting on the mouth. For a snaffle bit, it's about the diameter. So narrower diameter or more twisty puts more pressure because there's less surface area. Simple physics. If you have a curb bit, it's about the length of the shank, making a longer lever arm, meaning that you can put more pressure. Again, simple physics. These are techniques that can guide the horse during exercise, riding, training, all different kinds of activities. And it seems like curbs have been used for a very long time, but we're not exactly sure how long. There's been some argument that even at the earliest stages of horse domestication at Butai, that horses may have been bitted. This is based on the presence of what's called bit wear on the teeth. Now, this is extremely controversial, and in my opinion, does not constitute evidence of domestication. But because we know that wild horses and free-roaming horses that don't have bits in their mouth don't actually have this wear as well. And so they don't wear the bit, but they still have the wear. What does that mean? It's equivocal. If you want to learn more about horse domestication, I did a whole course about horses and their history, and I talked a lot about horse domestication. You can audit that course through the Memory School, link in the description. Now, getting back to the history of bits, we know that the Greeks used snaffle bits quite a bit, or some variant thereof, and this continued well into the Middle Ages, but in the Roman Empire they developed a new kind of bit, which is the curb bit that I mentioned. The curb bit became the more popular version in the Middle Ages for knights. It seems that it was used during the Norman Conquest, that kind of thing. It allowed for increased control over the horse during military sort of cavalry operations, and quickly became the standard in the early modern period. Charles I actually made an edict that made it illegal to use snaffle bits in England during the 17th century. Now, whether that edict was actually ever followed, probably wasn't, but it was on the books for a while. During the 18th century, snaffles kind of had a comeback, and they became seen as a way for a rider to more directly connect with the horse, form one continuous nervous system, horse and rider, the equestrian centaurs, they like to romantically call it. And now today we see actually the major kinds of bits, the snaffle, the curb bit, and there's also hybrid bits like the Pelham bit. I'm not going to talk too much about that. So I want to rein this in again. I'm making the same joke twice. Are these painful? Is this inhumane what we're doing to horses? Well, first of all, what exactly is pain? Well, pain is a conscious sensation. It's an emotion. It's how we respond to noxious stimuli. Excessive cold, excessive heat, excessive nociception, which is basically pain. When we're sensing that, that's the experience of pain going on in the body. We know that horses can experience pain based on a couple of different things. For one thing, they have increased physiological sense of distress and that sort of thing through sympathetic nervous system. So, heart rate, blood pressure, sweating, that kind of thing. We see all those signs when horses are in pain. We also know that horses have behavioral responses to pain too. This is everything from their ears flat back, they're more whale-eyed, they get more distressed, they're moving around more, sweating and pacing, that kind of thing. All the common signs we look for when horses are in pain, laminitis, colic, that kind of thing. And we know that if we give them certain drugs that block the pain cascade, they don't exhibit these signs anymore. They're no longer as stressed and they're no longer as showing these behavioral signs. This has all been well studied through horse castration studies, that kind of thing too. And we are evolutionarily homologous with horses. We evolved from the same common ancestor. Now, we're thinking about the mouth. It's actually innervated by two major nerves. Cranial nerves are a topic in and of themselves. They're all homologous in the vertebrates, but the two major nerves that service the mouth are the facial nerve as well as the trigeminal nerve. The facial nerve kind of serves the rostral 2/3 of the mouth, so the front 2/3. So on this diagram of the dog, it'd be everything from basically here to here. And then behind that is going to be the trigeminal nerve. They have the same exact thing in horses and in humans and in dogs. So we know for a fact that they have sensory neurons going towards the mouth. And we know that when we do noxious things to their mouth, like, dentistry or putting things in their mouth, let's say, this can actually be painful. Exactly how painful is it to put a bit in the mouth and to use the reins on a horse? Well, there's going to be a little bit of a test here. Now, find a pen, preferably a clean one, and we are going to do a test where you put it in your mouth. It needs to be a clean one. And you don't have to do this. I'm not your mom. I'm not your boss, whatever. Do whatever you want. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to put it in your mouth, down below your gum line there, and you're going to pull on it backwards as hard as possible. That is kind of the sensation that horses get when someone yanks on the reins. Now, how much actual pressure is being exerted by the reins when a rider is riding a horse? This can range quite a bit, and it depends on how heavy, the pull is, the kind of bit that's used, the kind of amount of pressure. But in general, it's anywhere between 2.5 kilograms per square centimeter to 15 kilograms per square centimeter, up to 45 in some cases at the high end, but the general mean is kind of somewhere in there. Now, the way you can measure this is if you get a kitchen scale and you put your finger down on it, the very tip, not the base there, the very tip, put it down, and you measure how much pressure you can get there, 1 kilogram, 2 kilograms, 3 kilograms. It's going to start to hurt a little bit around 3 kilograms, but the mouth is more sensitive than the finger in this respect. And if you think about it, that's the low end of what we typically ask horses when we're pulling on the reins like that. Now, I'm not a horse rider myself, and everyone has a different horse riding style, but as you can imagine, that would be pretty painful. Now, for the masochists out there, if you really want to experience what it's like to have this, you do the same thing. You put the pen in your mouth, you pull back, but this time you lie flat on your back with your head suspended, and you put weights at both of the end, 10 kilograms, 20 kilograms, that kind of thing. Two 20 kilogram weights would be if someone's jerking on the reins like that, 10 kilograms if they're lightly pulling on it like that kind of thing. As you can imagine, that's pretty painful. And horses, they develop sores in their mouth from these things. Not just on the gums, but also on the lips and the buccal mucosa. And it's not a small number either. It seems to be anywhere between 85 to 95% of horses get lesions on their lips and their cheeks because of this. On the gums themselves, they actually can develop what's called periosteitis, which is periosteum's the lining that covers the bone. And it's proliferative, so it actually forms bone spurs from repeated contact. And if you've ever had a canker sore, I get them all the time, they're terrible, but canker sores on the mouth, if you think about it, if you poke it with your tongue, it actually hurts worse than if you just poked any part of your mouth with your tongue to begin with. And this is what happens with lesions in horses. They become hypersensitized and even more painful over time. So, as you can see, these actually have all the same sort of things that we know about in humans. Now, how do horses respond to this? Because horses are conscious, they're aware of what's happening when we're doing this, and they will adapt to kind of deal with this. One thing that horses will do is they will put their tongue underneath the bit like this to kind of diffuse the pressure and relieve some of that in their mouth. Now, horses seem to have much less sensitive tongues than we do. We know this because they can get lacerations on their tongue and they can seem to be doing okay. Although when they get abscesses or really big foreign bodies on their tongue, they will refuse to eat and they can have painful chewing and eating that way. But horses seem to have less sensitive tongues in some respects. And this is all anecdotal. They actually haven't really tested this very much, but it still can lead to damage to the tongue, including bruising, congestion, and trauma, basically, to the tongue when horses do that. So it's not desirable. Other thing that horses do that can be even worse is that they actually will stick their tongue over and behind the bar like this. And when that happens, it actually makes the horse harder to control. Now, this is actually the frenulum, kind of at this spot of the tongue. That's the part kind of underneath there that horses will, that connects the tongue to the base of your mouth. It seems that horses will do that as a way of stopping the bit from putting on too much. Now, horse riders really don't like it when horses do this, and they will use what's called a tongue tie to keep the horse's tongue in place. The way that this is typically done is they put a little pantyhose or fabric or even a string around the tongue, and they'll tuck it under and they'll keep the tongue in place that way. This can actually cause lacerations, bruising, and even congestion of the tongue. Here's a picture of that and what that looks like. That's pretty painful when that happens. We also know that when horses put their tongue above that actually will push the soft palate upwards. The soft palate is something that prevents horses from aspirating when they're eating. But when it goes upwards, it actually will block the epiglottis. The epiglottis is the part of the throat that leads to the larynx, that leads to the trachea, that leads to your lungs. This increases the pressure inside of the lung when they're trying to breathe in and pull in air, and this can lead to bleeding inside of the lungs. That's called exercise-induced pulmonary hemorrhage. So when they're exercising, they're trying to breathe, their tongue is blocking that thing, it's pushing the soft palate up, they're getting air into their mouth, which is kind of doing it that way, and then that can cause bleeding and that sort of thing in the lungs of the horse. This is very, very common and underreported and understudied in many respects. We're only starting to realize how prevalent this is because now we can stick a camera down there and actually take a look and see what's going on. That all being said, these are painful. But why aren't horses telling us? The thing is, they actually are. And in many respects, riders seem to underestimate how painful it would be for their horse, as well as they don't recognize the signs of pain that are in their horses during riding. This can be everything from kind of pacing, shaking their head, bobbing their head up and down, whale-eyed, ears back, nostrils flared, or messing with the bit, continually tooth grinding, that kind of thing, shaking their head, those kind of things. And we know that these behavioral pain indices are actually less common in horses with bits in their mouth than they are when they're in their mouth. And there's actually this study that they did on horses, 63 of them, 62 of them showed improvement once they took the bit out of their mouth, except for one horse. There seemed to be one outlier horse that was like, yeah, this is fine with me. Different horses are going to have different tolerances for pain. That seems to be kind of just the general thing, but most horses, the vast majority of them, are having pain in their mouth when they have the bit in there. Now, humans have been using bits for thousands of years, which means that for thousands of years, human beings have been causing pain to their horses. What is to be done? The suggestion is to abolish the bit, is to use a bitless bridle, basically, to control the horse. And the logic behind this is pretty evident, right? Like, if these are painful things for the horses, it's going to make the horses less controllable, make them more unruly, and actually put the rider at greater risk. It's also inhumane, and we don't want to torture our horses just so that we can ride around and have fun. The argument against it is, well, that's the way things have always been done. It's safer for the rider, that sort of thing. It's not necessarily safer, because if the horse is painful, it's less liable to listen to you. It's less liable to actually respond to the way that you're riding. It also is inhumane, and that matters for something, right? Like, if we're putting pressure on the horse's mouth to the point where it's getting oral lacerations, it's getting tongue congestion, it's getting bleeding in its lungs, it's painful. And if we can avoid that, then that's good. Now, I'm not making this video to shame anybody, to make anyone feel worse about what they do. I'm giving them information that they can form their own sort of conclusions and come to their own ideas. The point of learning is not necessarily to reinforce or reify our preconceived notions. It's to challenge what seems normal, the things that we've become habituated to, and trying to uncover what we can do better. Because that's the point, right? We're trying to do better and not trying to be a stagnant population that doesn't actually grow or learn or change. And this is how things progress, right? We got to learn, we got to criticize ourselves, we got to criticize others as well. And this is a healthy way of living and a healthy way of thinking about how we treat our animals, because the ways that we form bonds with our animals aren't necessarily equal, but we can do better. And I think that is kind of the goal, and that is something that I strive for when I'm dealing with my animals. I'm always trying to learn, I'm always trying to do better for myself and for my animals. I don't always hit the perfect mark, but I want to try to do better. And I think that's something I want to leave off with. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a little bit. Even if you don't agree with my conclusion here, I encourage you to do your own reading and to learn and to develop your ideas a little bit more. And you know, if you ever have any topics for future videos, let me know. I've got a few on the back burner. I'm going to come back to the philology. I'm going to talk a little bit more about climate change because that's something I'm passionate about. But leave a comment, like, share. Check out the memory school. Check out the stuff I've done with talked about with horses before. I have a playlist on the YouTube, but check out my course as well on the memory school. It is super fantastic. They've got some new courses coming up this fall, and every season we've got some new courses and new material coming out, so check it out. That's all for now, and I hope I didn't go too far and kept it relatively reined in. So that's all for now. Peace.